Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Yes, and yes. I have missed everybody. I'm short. My Pasho, Mike, today he got called into work, and we are back for season 2, episode 1. And what a way to start. I just want to welcome our guest, Penny Zenker, coming from South of Philly, Pennsylvania. Penny, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me here.
Yeah, we are excited. And Penny has so much knowledge that she is going to drop. But first, let me tell you where you can find her. You can find her at her website, which is Penny Zenker, Zenker 360.com. Again, pennyzenker360.com, or on Instagram at Penny Zenker. And again, that's Zenker. So a little bit about our guest, and there is a lot to her. So Penny is a focusologist, and I love that name right out of the gate. International motivational speaker, business strategy coach, and best-selling author. Penny founded, developed, and sold her first multi-million-dollar business while living in Zurich, Switzerland. A quick shout out to Be Easy, our foreign exchange student who is in Switzerland and studying, and I'm sure going to listen into this. Later, at the world's 4th largest market research company, she managed business unit turnarounds and was a Tony Robbins business coach, helping entrepreneurs around the world to double their businesses. Her clients tell her her gift is cutting through the clutter and helping them focus on the most important and relevant areas to sustainably grow their businesses. Penny's high energy and interactive keynote presentations, motivational speeches, and workshops inspire and challenge you to think more strategically and to be more emotionally intelligent. And we got to explore that a little bit, and inspire personal leadership. Penny is a best-selling author of The Productivity Zone, Stop the Tug of War with Time, and she's got an amazing distraction quiz at her website that you definitely need to go to. As a master Nlp practitioner, and again, NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming, and a neurostrategist, she integrates the elements of thought, communication, and behavior to provide strategies for positive changes and maximum results. Penny's expertise focuses on strategic thinking, leadership, problem solving, communication, and productivity. She has coached hundreds of successful business leaders and entrepreneurs in leadership roles, relationships, and building culture. Penny also hosts her own podcast, Take Back Time, which can be found on all major platforms. Penny, that's a mouthful.
Welcome. I know. Wow.
To the show again. Yes. So congrats on all that. And it's always fun for me to research the amazing work that our guests do, and then also just have you get into that space, hopefully, of this guy's talking about me. And not to get too crazy, but I'm doing some good work, and to just take that split second just to kind of honor that in yourself. So I hope you were able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, sometimes you're like, who is that he's talking about, right? Is that me? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, what you do is a lot of hard work and deep work. And so, yeah, it's really important for us to take that time. So Penny, we always start the show with a thought of the day. And sometimes I get long-winded on these babies. So this one is a very short one. But just in your opening title, focusologist, that's kind of what drew me to use this quote for you. So here it is. If it costs you peace, it's too expensive. And that's unknown. But I'm going to say it again. If it costs you peace, it's too expensive. And I love that one. One of my students gave me that. And what are your thoughts on that? And why would I pick that out of millions of quotes that I could pick for you? Why pick that one?
I don't know, but you don't even know how perfect that is for me, because peace of mind, that calmness is, and finding that inner peace is really important to me. And it's something that I feel in some way, shape, or form. That's what I'm looking to support others in finding. So it's funny that it said costing us peace, right? Because there's a lot of other words that could have been chosen there. But I believe that's, there's two things that we're all looking for in life. And it's not happiness, in my opinion. It's inner peace and greater meaning. That those are the two things that if you put them together, I'll bet you that you would say that somebody is happy, right? For that feeling. So I agree that it's too costly, too big a price to pay if it's going to cost you that inner peace. It means it's not in alignment with who you are and who you want to be.
I think we can spend the whole show on this.
We could.
I'm loving where you're taking it. And it's interesting, that you say it's not happiness. And so my definition of happiness has to do a little bit with this quote. And it's the serenity that you feel from, kind of sharing your gift. And this goes back to this inner peace, which to me is what you just said. Hey, there's two things that everybody is looking for. It is this inner peace, which can be kind of disguised a little bit in my definition of happiness. But I think at the end of the day, when you've, worked really hard for that one particular day and you get home and you put your head on your pillow, it's that, yes, that feeling of the inner peace that you're talking about. On the flip side, not that to take this in a negative way, but I'm sure this is one of the gifts that you share with your clients is, let's go back to, we just had a day and we go to put our head down and we don't have that inner peace. How do you help your clients learn to let go? When that does kind of come to tie it back into our thought of the day. And it's crazy. I'm 100% on these thought of the days. And I've been,
you know why you're 100%? Because you just used the other trigger word that I am digging deep into. And I'm actually going to be spending more time in my next book is talking about letting go, because we suck at it.
Yeah.
Right. And it is, it's one of the things I've been talking a lot about in the pandemic, and that really came up for me to recognize that it is the secret to resilience. And nobody's really talking about it because we really can't forgive or move on or set priorities, or unless we're able to let go of pain, let go of things that are less important. And we're just not good at letting go because we think we're losing something. But in reality, when we let go, we're gaining. And that is part of the way that we get that inner peace, is to let go of things that aren't important, that aren't in alignment for us, that are keeping us from who we want to be and where we want to go in our lives. So I think you're spot on with peace. The inner peace and the letting go is right up my alley right now.
Man, all right, well, let's get in.
But I didn't answer your question. Do you want me to answer that?
How do you? Because this is it's key, and I don't want to get up. So you remember, because I don't want to lose you right now, but with your background, with your interest in the brain. So my 2 cents from reading and my background, I'm a registered nurse. I just retired. I have a few health issues. So I had 29 years of working as a nurse. And I'm just going to try and tie this into your distraction quiz. I think one of the reasons why it's hard for us to let go is because our amygdala is constantly firing from just overuse, and from, and I got nothing against technology, but of always being on. And I think it's hard to get into this space, back to this inner peace that we've been talking about, if you are always distracted. And when you're distracted, you're going to kind of put up your dukes more often than not when people are coming at you. And then those dukes are up all the time and go back to, hey, we're trying to lay down and go to sleep and finish our day and learn how to let go and learn how to forgive. But we're just struggling to hold on to that. So now and my wife gets so mad at me because it's like I ask her a question and I got to get better. Listeners, I'm going to get better this season 2. I'm learning how to do this thing, but I'm maybe not off to the best start. So how do you help someone who is struggling with that to let go?
So there's so many different aspects and so many different things that we need to let go of. So let's talk about the meaning that we give something, because that in itself will determine, right? Coming back to being a focusologist, right? Is that what we decide is going to be the energy of our focus comes down to the meaning that we give something. And that is then directs what the energy of our thoughts are, the energy of our emotions and our feelings, and then what we actually do. So if we were to stop, right, and freeze frame and say, okay, what meaning have we given this thing that somebody said to us? Or, if we're talking about forgiveness, right, and somebody said something that's really upsetting or hurtful, how do we shift that meaning from them intentionally saying that to hurt us, or whatever meaning we're giving it? And how do we shift the meaning right there in the moment? And this is something I didn't realize, but I actually have been doing this for most of my life. It's a question that we ask ourselves, because we ask ourselves in every moment of every day, what does this mean? And we don't realize it. It's unconscious. We give it a meaning, and then we just run with that initial meaning, which is usually bullshit, right? It's maybe based on a bad experience we had, or a whole different mixture of reasons why we may have come to that meaning, but it very well might not be true, but we don't challenge it. So if we were to freeze frame it and say, okay, here's the meaning we gave it. So create some heightened awareness and then ask ourselves, what else could that mean? Just challenge it by asking another question. What else could it mean? So that we're giving ourselves some perspective, right? Taking a step out of it and away from it in that freeze frame and saying, what else could this mean? And what else could this mean? And by then we start to come up with some other things that it could mean. It could mean that I hurt the feelings of that person and they said this to hurt me, or what's going on? Something must be upsetting them. And this isn't like them, right? So it starts to get us into more of a place of empathy and understanding. And I've always seen it as though there could be 2 or 3 right answers. I'm going to choose the one that's most productive for me. I'm going to choose my focus and my energy on the thing that's going to enable me to show up in the best way possible. And, maybe I don't do it 100% of the time, but I'm pretty good at challenging it or recognizing when, hey, this isn't serving me. I see the results that I'm getting. That's not really what I want. What meaning am I giving this? And how could I look at this in a different way? So that's one way to let go, is to decide to shift the meaning that we're giving it in the moment and let go of that story that's no longer serving us, for instance.
Again, man, I wish we had 10 hours to really jump into this stuff, because just the way our brain works, we have these experiences, and if we're not aware, we're going to file them, and then they kind of just go in with these other experiences, and we could interpret it in the total wrong way. And I think the key word that I circled them, and just so you know, I'm not on my phone. When my head's down, I'm taking all kind of notes, because
me too.
Mike and I said, all right, we just want to help one person with this show. That's our goal. And it's always been me. I've taken so much from each episode, but the key word that I want you to expand on is awareness. I think that's helping us all get into that space to understand, where am I, and do I have the awareness? And I think I don't want to get things mixed up, but it almost somewhat ties into your emotional intelligence that we were talking about. But maybe you can expand on how do you increase someone's awareness?
Okay. Well, this whole thing, by the way, that we're talking about, this is the emotional intelligence, and it starts with awareness, because we tend to 99% of what we do is unconscious, and what we think is unconscious. I did a TEDx back in 2017, which I'd encourage everybody to go and take a look at. It has a lot to do with this, but I talk about how we have 70,000 thoughts a day, which is mind-blowing, right? But only 5% of those are new. And we don't even recognize that 95% of the thoughts that we have are stories and thoughts that we repeat over and over, because it's mostly unconscious. So our first step is to be aware of what we're feeling and what we're thinking and what we're saying. And so ways for us to do that are like, you could journal, for instance. It's a way to create more awareness of where you are emotionally. What types of things are you focused on? You'll go back and read it over and look at the words that you use. One of the techniques of working with someone in neurolinguistic programming and NLP is to have them tell their story, and you take it down exactly as they've written it. And then you go back and you highlight certain words. So you said that was barbaric, right? So it's a huge word, right? So that means you can see where someone is emotionally. So when we can take a step away, and again, it's like asking that question, what else could this mean? Is every time that we can examine, right, and kind of see ourselves as these experiments, the words that we use, like look at the energy of the words that we're using. What is that telling you about what meaning you gave it and how it makes you feel, and what the results that you're likely going to get when you're feeling like that? And so words are really big in that. The stories that you're telling yourself, right, are big. Is what kind of phrases do you kind of constantly repeat? You know, people who are, we talked about time management a little bit. You know, if you're constantly saying, I don't have the time, you're just making yourself, you're limiting yourself. And so being aware that actually it's not about that you don't have the time. Whatever this thing is that somebody wants you to do, you either don't want to do it, you don't see it as a priority, but we use that sort of blanket statement, I don't have the time, as an excuse to push it off or to resist our reality that it needs to get done.
Great advice. So speaking of time, you know, what is in your time that you give to yourself, what's the best thing you do for you? What is the best thing you do for you? I'm gonna ask you that first part, then I got a part B to it.
Okay. So the best thing that I do for me is I write in a gratitude journal. And I've been doing this ever since a really challenging divorce process that I was going through. You know, somebody's like, oh, you should journal all the horrible things that he's done to you. And I thought, oh my God, what a terrible, like, energy to put yourself in, right? I would never do that. Of course, people do that. They just kind of repeat, like, and play the victim and just make that story bigger and bigger. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. And I was listening to an Oprah Soul series, and it was about gratitude and keeping a gratitude journal. I was like, yes, that is what I'm going to do. And even on days when it's super hard to find things that you're grateful for, the more you look for it, the more you find it in little things, right? And listen to what other people are grateful for. So I think gratitude is one of the most soul enriching things that I do for myself, that feed me positive energy, that have me show up for my day in a more empathetic, more grounded, more meaningful way.
Love, and you might have already answered part B to this, but what is the best thing you do for yourself to help you focus, since you're a focusologist? And I know the gratitude will be part of that, but is there something else? If the listeners out there is like, man, I get to work and I just can't really focus my attention where it needs to be. And we'll get into this deeper with your time management. That's in your book. I want you to give some plugs out, but just you personally, you know, what is it you do to focus?
Squirrel. I just want people to know, because people are like, oh, you must be so organized. And, and actually I struggle with this just as much as anyone else. And I'm in a phase right now where I'm feeling a little fuzzy because when our circumstances change around us, sometimes we have things that really work for us and then they work until they don't work. And then we have to, again, step back and create some awareness as to what's working and what's not working. But what works for me is, is knowing in the beginning of the day, what are the most important things for me. I'm somebody who I say I really try to live the 80-20 rule. So being that I find what's the 20% that's going to make 80% of the difference, so that I truly know with clarity what are my most important and value added items to do. That really helps me to stay focused. And also, before I sit down to do anything, I identify in that period of time, what is it that I'm going to accomplish? So, not just at the beginning of the day, but before I start anything, I say, okay, I'm sitting down to prepare for a presentation. What do I have time to do in this period of time? So maybe I'm going to bullet it out, or I'm going to go do some research. And this is just going to be looking at different articles and being inspired. So I get clarity before I start how I'm going to use the time.
Let's get into your book. I want to give you an opportunity to educate our listeners. So again, the title of the book, The Productivity Zone: Stop the Tug of War with Time. First of all, congrats on that. I know it's a bestseller. Just congrats on writing a book. I think it's another thing that a lot of people have the thought to say that they want to do that. But very few people actually get out and execute that. So I just want to honor that in you, first of all. Second of all, share the highlights for the listeners, get them to go out there and buy that baby and enhance their life.
Definitely. Well, this particular book, as it relates to productivity and, and I'm not going to say time management, because I think that obviously we can't get away from the term. But when we focus on time, we're really putting ourselves in a scarcity mindset. So we need to focus on performance. So this is a macro level of understanding a performance framework. So I have what I call the productivity zone. It looks like a bell curve, but it's not a bell curve. And it tells us that inside the center of that curve is where we have 10 core drivers that'll help us to shift our focus back into what's productive. It's a depending on where we are and what we're working on and what our goal is, it might require us to use one or the other, and they're kind of all intertwined, but I pull them apart. And so there's 10 core drivers in the zone, and what's outside of the zone, just to keep it simple, is we're either over functioning or under functioning. So we're either procrastinating or we're caught up in perfectionism. So just to keep it super simple. So efficient and effective are the scales. And that's what gets us into the zone, is by being both efficient and effective. And so this simple framework helps us to step out in a way to see what's working and what's not working. And those 10 core drivers are broken down into 3 categories: into our mindset, into our strategies and how we approach the time that we have and the goals and objectives that we have, and then how do we make it sustainable.
Sounds like an incredible book. And I really love just your efficient and effective scales. That's such a good visual. And me being a nurse, you're always, as a patient, trying to achieve homeostasis, which is just balance. Right. It's this balance and can I achieve health through, exercise and proper nutrition and mindfulness and just self-care. Such a good visual for me, and sounds like an incredible book. And I'm gonna have to get out and read that baby. Sometimes I'm not challenging you, but sometimes the guests actually send one out to Life's Essential Ingredients. So we definitely wouldn't turn it down, but I'm not going to put pressure on you. I want to get into, though, I know nothing about this, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but hey, I want to learn neuro-linguistic programming. tell me, and then obviously the listeners, what that is.
Well, it's it's just understanding it's intertwined in everything that I do. If you think about it from a macro level, it's really understanding the difference between cause and effect, and getting ourselves always at cause. Right? And effect is when things are unconscious, or things are, we're responding to what's happening in the world around us, and not taking ownership for the choices that we're making. So, and it's rooted in our thinking. And that's really why I came up with this focusologist, because in there I talk about like an NLP practice, which is the interrelation between our thoughts, our feelings, and the actions that we take. And so, yeah, that's so many different elements of neurolinguistic programming that it's difficult to define in one sentence. I'm sure there is a definition. Actually, I think I have one up on my wall here. Hold on a second. I haven't used this in a long time. But NLP explores the relationships between how we think, how we communicate, and our patterns of behaviors and emotion. That's the definition that I use.
Love it. Love it. Definitely a lot to that, and something that I'm going to follow up and try and research and learn more. But a key word that you shared that I definitely want you to highlight for the listeners is the communication. You know, I think, and I know you build culture, and so many challenges stem from, you know, a lack of clear communication. So, yeah, first of all, a crazy question for you, but define communication, you know, for you, and then how would you help a client that perhaps is struggling in that area?
Well, I mean, communication is like a really broad, big topic. So it starts with where we're coming from. So it starts with what we already talked about, which is the meaning that we give something, because it's how we communicate, but it's also how someone's receiving it. So I always say that if you want to be a good leader and you want to be a great communicator, then you have to take ownership and responsibility, not just for what you're saying and how you're saying it, but also how it's being received. And I believe that the best way to do that is to check in with your state of being before you even start the conversation. Because if you have a bias before you get into a conversation, that's going to bias the conversation.
Love it. Have you been called to consult with a business or an individual that's just been struggling with their communication processes, and you know, how do you help turn things around in that kind of arena? I know that these are still kind of broad, but I'm always fascinated because I think everything boils down to communication. You're going to build everything off of how you are communicating. And I love your statement of you really have to be mindful of the way that your communication is being received, and also take a step back before you communicate is what are my biases, and am I going to push those on to how I'm going to communicate, and therefore it's not going to be received well. So yeah, I'm fascinated with the communication, and I just don't think we do enough work in that space to help us get along better.
For sure. Well, so, you know, it comes back to that awareness piece of being aware of your communication style and being aware of others' communication style. It's a very simple first step, right? It's the first thing that I would teach or work with someone on is to help them to see, you know, how it's being received. So if I tend to use a Rubik's Cube when I use this example, and for NLP reasons, I'm anchoring it right to an object so it's easier to remember. So I just happen to have one right here because it's what I do. And I just kind of talk about how each color on each side of the Rubik's Cube can represent a different personality type, a different department that's, working towards a particular goal, or, different markets that you might have your company presenting in, right? So every time you're looking to communicate, you have to take all the different colors into perspective as to how they would interpret what it is that you're saying. So if you're going to put a goal out there, or some kind of communication, how do you do it so that each one of these that you're speaking to can receive it in the way that you're intending to receive it? And so just by that, right? Because when you get feedback, whether it's what people heard, or maybe there's some aggression, some misunderstandings, typically it's because it's just a misunderstanding, because somebody who wants details, right? If we just look at personality types, maybe somebody wants hard facts and figures, and you're giving them this great vision and all this excitement, and they're like, well, that doesn't do anything for me. Like, I need to give me the hard facts. So sometimes it's just a clash of not giving people what they need to understand. And it's not really a misunderstanding. It's just, or it's not a conflict. It's just a misunderstanding, and can be easily overcome by understanding what they need more in their communication.
And you're making it sound simple. And I love your Rubik's Cube. It's such a good visual to see how people can be seeing things different. And then, you were speaking about it before. I don't remember the exact context, but such a powerful word, empathy. And I think communication has so much to do with that. And I think in this example, if you're the person that's going to communicate this message, if you can just take a step back and really look at things from the eyes of the person that's receiving that, it would solve a lot of problems.
For sure. Can I share a story?
Yeah, I would love it.
Because I think sometimes people may think, like you're saying, well, that seems a little oversimplified. And, how do I really apply that to my life? So I was working in a market research company, and I was brought into the management team. And the CEO brought me in. I had worked for one of the daughter companies, but I had no interaction or connection with the other executive board members. And, I had assumed that I would be welcomed in with open arms, and I was not. They didn't meet me. They didn't interview me. They felt like I shouldn't be there. So I immediately had this, let's call it like this. If we're looking at the Rubik's Cube, it was all mixed up and very difficult to work with them. And my responsibilities were what do you call that? Matrix oriented. So nobody actually reported to me that my projects crossed other departments, these other people's departments, and they actually told their people not to give me any time. So I naturally had a conflict, and that was before we even started, right? I didn't even need to communicate anything, and it was immediately resisted and misunderstood. So my challenge was in the communication, how do I better work with these people? And so, because it was triggering me, I was getting upset, right? And frustrated and not knowing where to go. And, there were even mornings when I would drive in, and I'm a positive person, and I get out of bed excited, and I didn't want to go into work. I'd sit in my car and just be like, feel the dread of having to go in, my stomach, feeling like lead. And what helped me was this process of stepping back and saying, okay, how do I put myself in their shoes? How do I understand where they're coming from? So I stepped back and I said, okay, here's my interaction with the CFO, for instance. And then as I put his hat on and I stood in his shoes, I could see some of the things that he was feeling, right? I could be more empathetic and understanding. And that then helped me speak into his listening. I could find where we might have common ground so that I could focus on that first and build some rapport. And, you have to be very strategic about it. And it's hard, and it's hard work sometimes, but there was a big enough why, right? In my position and wanting to make a difference there, that that I could do that. And I could see, wow, he saw me as a threat. He saw me coming in and he wanted to be the next CEO. And here he thinks now I'm a threat and I might be the forerunner for that position. And I really didn't care about the position, but he doesn't know that. And he doesn't really care, right? He just sees me as that threat. So it helps you to interact with people differently when you understand where they're coming from and what they might be thinking.
Great story and such a good concrete example.
Let me just add one more thing is we didn't become good friends. That's not always the objective. So I want that also to be clear. We found a common ground to communicate and achieve our goal. There are some other people that I became good friends with, but just so we know that sometimes that's not the end goal. That's not necessary, in building good communication. So I just want to say that.
You throwing that out there. And I've been a high school, college, and professional basketball coach. And I think when you're on a team and it's a competitive environment, you're in the similar space that you just ended your comments with of, hey, we just got to find a way to respect each other. Everybody's going to come here with different personalities. You're not all going to go out to dinner and hang out. But when we're on the court, yeah, we're going in the same direction with these processes and building this culture. One of the things I'm interested in, you could pick any quiz that you wanted to, and maybe you've changed it. I'm just running across you. So, forgive me if I'm misspeaking here, but you decided to put a distraction quiz. Why? And obviously I know focusologist and distraction, so I get all that, but why pick distraction? And just tell the listeners about that a little bit.
Well, because it's the number one thing that keeps us from finding and sticking to the 20% that we identify as the most important thing. And primarily because it's more than 50%, maybe even up to 100% within our control. And so that's one of the things that I also talk about and have talked about a lot in the last year and a half is, if we look at what a tug of war actually is, it's a struggle for control. And I find that we exhaust ourselves trying to control things that we can't control. And then we find ourselves in a place of learned helplessness when it comes to the things that we can control. So I chose a distraction quiz so that we can see our greatest obstacles and have a little fun with it by finding out whether we're, a squirrel, a hamster, a deer in the headlights, but at the same time, getting more specific as to what are those things that are distracting us? What are the categories that distract us? And now, when we create that heightened awareness, like we talked about earlier, awareness, now we can own it at another level. We can't unsee it, right? We know that we're the squirrel or whatever. So what can we do to do something about that?
Again, listeners, please go to Penny's website, pennyzenker360.com, and take this distraction quiz. I know I'm going to be all over that, just trying to get better and keep learning. Different segue here again. Everybody's been going through this COVID, obviously, and hopefully we're getting to a space where we can create whatever this new normal is. And I know there were so many challenges with, hundreds of thousands of U.S. citizens and millions throughout the world who have died, unfortunately. But for you, is there something that you learned about yourself that COVID kind of guided you into that space? And I don't know if I'm asking you a clear question, but is there something that a silver lining? Perhaps I'm trying to be respectful to maybe some people that have lost somebody, but hopefully you get where I'm going. I think
sure. I was very fortunate, throughout the whole period in that nobody in my family got sick. So I feel really grateful for that. And, I think that it just, it highlighted the resiliency. I mean, I would say 80% of my business is public speaking. So, you know, I'm laughing because I remember I was in a group with other speakers, and it was just, maybe it was in February. And he's like, one of these guys, like, are you concerned that they're going to shut down all of our events? And I really thought, like, this guy, I didn't know him very well. We had just, you know, come into this group together, and I thought, wow, this guy's crazy. Like, no way they're going to shut down all of our events. And then, you know, a month later, you know, I'm paying back deposits that people had made, and, you know, my whole business is shut down. So I think that it just, it kept me on my toes in the context of, you know, okay, well, what can I do strategically to support people, and where could I, you know, donate my time so that, you know, if I had some extra time, where could I be of service? And then also, how could I find additional ways to create income? You know, people in the beginning weren't really doing things online either, right? They were kind of deer in the headlights, not sure what to do for many of the organizations. But so, you know, I don't know that I have as much of a big aha, like, because I worked from home before. But I think it's just that we are so resilient that, you know, it just having the opportunity for me to pivot, to create more content. Like, I loved some of the deep thinking that I've really been able to do. I actually, you know, some people say they have so much time on their hands. I actually had less time because I was just so looking to get involved here and do that, and be more involved with the kids and the activities at home. I mean, luckily my kids also were very independent and did great studying online and everything. So I think it was just another time. I don't want to make it any different than, because we have constantly had changes throughout history where, you know, all of a sudden we've got this, not able to think about it, but like in 2008, great financial crisis. My life was in absolute turmoil at that time, probably more so than now. Like, I went through a divorce. I lost most of my savings, and actually was losing my job at the same time. So I think for me, it was like, whoo, thank God it's not 2008, right?
Man, well, thank you for that. And I love just to highlight what I took from what you shared was you looked at that time as, hey, how can I serve others? And I just love that. And for listeners, you know, this show, Life's Essential Ingredients, is part of C4 Leaders. And C4 Leaders is based upon these 4 C's, which is communication, chemistry, consistency, and creativity. And we define communication as listening with an empathetic ear with the intent of serving others. And so when I'm listening to you, I just see you in that space of, hey, who can I listen to so then I can go serve? And so, yeah, thank you so much for doing that. Hey, we're almost wrapping this up, but is there a question that you're like, I wish Jeff would have asked me this because I really want to share this information, or are we kind of good?
I think there's one other thing that comes up for me when you talk about, and you just mentioned the word innovation. And I think that even though the pandemic was an extremely difficult time for many, and it put a serious constraint on many businesses, and I used to talk about this before the pandemic, and we can see time as a constraint and a limitation, or we can see it as a catalyst. And I think that many took the opportunity to see the pandemic as a catalyst to step back and to innovate and to look at things differently, to find that other perspective, right? To not just get stuck in thinking about things and looking at things in one way, like we might if we were stuck in one side of the Rubik's Cube, but to examine the different ways that we do our business, and could we achieve this in different ways? And I think that, you know, whenever we face a seemingly impossible problem, when we approach it with that type of potential innovation and seeing it as a catalyst, we come up with fantastic new ways of doing things. And I think this is going to really positively impact a lot of businesses. At first, it may go down as we see, but I believe that it's going to propel a lot of companies way forward, because it maybe got out of narrow-minded thinking and took us outside of the box. And I think that is that's going to be good for our future. I mean, look at how quickly they push through the vaccinations and other things that take forever normally, right, to get pushed through the system. So maybe there's something wrong with the system that could be modified for the better in the future to provide that level of security and intensive review, but at the same time, do it in a more efficient way, right? Efficient and effective, finding that balance.
Right back to your kind of what you were sharing before with your book and things. And I'm hoping we could do the same thing in education. You know, I really hope that this pandemic has caused, and again, I'm not working anymore in this capacity, but was a nursing professor at a community college and do a lot of things great. But I think education can use some revamping too to become more efficient and effective. So last thing I want to say, and I don't want to sound too morbid, but again, I've been a nurse. I've been surrounded by death. I want to fast forward for you, let's say 50 years, hopefully, and you're on your deathbed and you're surrounded by the people that love you. And John Alston has an amazing quote that I love. It's the only thing you take with you when you're gone is what you leave behind. What is it that you want those people who are sitting there holding your hand, telling you how much they love you? What is it you want them to have in their heart and soul?
This makes me want to cry. That's a great question. I can tell you that one of the things that moves me the most that people say to me today, and that I would love to hear more of that, is that people say, you know, you made me want to be a better person. So I think that it comes back to that inner peace. What I want for people, what I want for myself on the last day of my life, is to have that inner peace, and that know that I made the world, left it better than when I came onto it. And that's to me, then I lived a good life. And I'm an adventurous person. I like to do a lot of things. I like to interact and impact as many people as possible. And so I feel like I'm doing that. I'm really living my life to the fullest and taking some risks in doing that. And that would make me happy, is just to hear that people that I made a difference.
Awesome. Well, from getting to know you and watching a lot of your clips, and I would say you're doing that, and definitely I think you'll be in that space when your time does come. And listeners, our time has come to say, boom, that just happened. We got season 2, episode 1. Yep. Penny's dropping the mic, dropping the boom on you. Again, you can find her at pennyzenker360.com, and it's Zenker. She has some great stuff on her website. Please reach out to her and support her with what she's doing. Listeners, we thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry we've been gone, but we're back, baby. We're back, and we have a lot of great guests on the docket. So with that, thank you, and we're out.